So in this video, we're going to go over a number of different cost concepts. Let's start by distinguishing between total fixed and variable costs. So let's start by writing down that total costs are equal to fixed costs plus variable costs. Okay, so the fixed costs are the component of costs of producing some item that are completely unrelated to the number of units that the firm produces. And the variable costs are the remaining costs, the costs that just depend on how much is produced by this firm. So I have a question for you to get you thinking about this. The first question is, are fixed costs and sunk costs exactly the same thing? So think about it for a moment, and then you can unpause the video when you're ready to proceed, or if you need a hint. Okay, so some textbooks seem to say that they are exactly the same thing, but they're not. Fixed costs are sometimes sunk, but sometimes they are avoidable. So for example, if you're making some item and you need factory workers to work in this factory to make the item, if you're operating at all, you need to heat the factory in the winter. So heating the factory would be a component of the fixed costs. However, if you were to cease production entirely, not just produce zero, but actually shut down the factory, board up the doors, other things like that, like basically leave the market or at least temporarily shut down, you could avoid that component of the fixed cost. In fact, starting even tomorrow, you could eliminate that component of the fixed cost. Just turn off the heat. Other types of components of the fixed cost, however, are sunk. The highly specialized machinery example that I gave in the last video is actually a great example of that. So there are some types of fixed costs which are sunk, other times which are avoidable if the firm were to sort of shut down entirely. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about are the average costs and marginal costs. So average costs, to get those, you just divide whichever type of cost you're looking at by the level of output of the firm. So to get the average total cost, you just take the total cost and divide by the quantity of output. To get the average fixed cost, you take the fixed cost and divide by the quantity of output. And likewise for the variable costs, to get the average variable cost, you just take the variable cost and divide by the quantity of output. Now, marginal costs are equal to the increase in costs from producing one extra unit of output. Well, we're actually going to calculate it using derivatives, but the idea is it's the rate of change of costs as output increases, the derivative of the cost function. And it's actually the same thing to say it's the derivative of the total cost function and the derivative of the variable cost function, because those are the same thing. The fixed cost component does not change as you increase output, so it doesn't influence anything. Okay, so let's look at a particular example. So let me erase what I have up here, and let's write down a cost function. So we have that the cost of producing some level of output is equal to the level of output produced squared plus 9. Right? So if 4 units of output are produced, then the total cost to the firm is 4 squared plus 9, which is equal to 25. Okay? If the total amount produced were 5, then the total cost would be 5 squared plus 9, which is 34. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out which parts of this are the variable costs and which are the fixed costs. So spend a moment thinking about that, pause the video, and when you're done, we'll proceed. Okay, so the fixed cost component is simply the constant in the cost function. That is the part that does not change with the level of output. So the fixed costs are just 9. And the variable costs are the component of the cost function that changes. So this is variable cost is equal to Q squared. Okay. The next question is, what is the average total cost? To get the average total cost, you just divide by quantity of output. So average total cost is just equal to the cost function divided by Q. And actually, there's often a mistake that students make. It's equal to Q squared over Q plus 9 over Q. So the average total costs are equal to Q plus 9 over Q. Now let's look at the marginal cost. To get the marginal cost, to do that, we're just going to take the derivative of the cost function, which simply equals 2Q. Okay? So these are all things that you should be very comfortable doing. In the next video, we're going to use these cost concepts to investigate different cost concepts like economies of scale, economies of scope, learning by doing, etc.